wanna talk? So let's talk. Here. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk your
Good evening, and welcome to Talk to Solomon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Stan Solomon. I'm the host.
I'm Chief Steve Davis, in-studio guest host.
And also co-hosting, Brent Johnson, freedomradio.us. Brent, are you there, sir?
That's me. I'm right here.
All right. Our guest of honor, of course, is Dr. Alan Keyes. Alan, good evening.
Good evening. How is everybody tonight? Hello, everyone.
Happy New Year, Alan.
Happy New Year, right? We haven't spoken since the new year began.
Well, it's a new year.
I think it's at least a potentially joyful new year. Happy in the true sense of the term, because we're never deprived of that. But in other respects, I think it might turn out to be a fairly challenging new year, don't you think?
I think that is really what we have to talk about today. I have a series of stories, so Alan, I need you to kind of limit your answers here because I'd like to cover all of them. But I want to start with the Texas law, the Firearms Protection Act, which Texas has filed. I don't know if it's passed, but it will. That basically says, hey, Washington, that law that you have or are or will pass having to restrict people's right to have and bear arms, it's null and void in our state. And if anyone from the federal government tries to enforce any part of it, we will arrest you, we will put you in jail for a substantial period of time and charge you a substantial amount of money. And by the way, here's some free chapstick. Your thoughts on what we're going to see in this contest between the states? We could talk about Obamacare the same way with 27 states saying no. Are we going to see in this year, 2013, a break in the cooperation between the states and the federal government?
What's that for?
For Alan.
Oh, for me. Okay. Well, Stan, I think as described, it's rather more than a break, don't you think? I've tried to get people over the years to look seriously at the implications of the issues we're dealing with now as a country. And I've always had to kind of make up scenarios that illustrated how you go from what's happening to the dreaded reality of armed civil conflict. The scenario you have just described is no longer speculative. There is a law in the books in Texas. It puts the state of Texas in a position where if federal agents and other people do certain things, then Texas will use its armed force to stop them, thwart them. And of course, the people who are acting ostensibly on behalf of the government of the United States, also armed, will use their force to defend themselves. What do we call that?
We don't call it a Mexican standoff. We call it a constitutional standoff.
Well, it's not constitutional anymore. That's not fair to the Constitution. The Constitution is words put together and intended to prevent what I just described. It should never happen under the Constitution. But when you start doing things that are contrary to the Constitution, that exceed the authorized powers that are, for instance, delegated to the national government, then you're no longer dealing with a constitutional issue, Stan. You're dealing with the fact that actions have taken the Constitution and shredded it up and put people in a position where they stand on their right as it comes from the hand of God, and as it is also, by the way, explicitly recognized in the Constitution, just to make clear where the Constitution would stand in this kind of confrontation, with one side ignoring right and the other side defending it. We've been there before, but the tables are turned in one respect, because whereas once Lincoln could look at some of the states and say, you are doing wrong, you are violating the fundamental premise of right, from which the Constitution is derived. Now the tables go the other way, as I think many of the founders anticipated might happen. That's why they said that periodically, people who mean to remain free and have their rights respected have to be willing to stand on those rights, come what may. Even if that means that, as Jefferson said somewhere, that the tree of liberty has to be watered in every generation with the blood of patriots. Now, I go through all of that, Stan, not because I or anybody else in their right mind would want to see this happen, but because we are dealing with issues that have these vital and absolutely inescapable responsibilities to God and truth at stake. And I think people need to stop acting like this is regular politics, because it's irresponsible to do so. These are matters that require the deepest, most serious, most conscientious consideration it is possible to give to issues in human affairs. And we had better start doing so like serious people.
I would certainly hope so. Now, Brent, your comment, please.
Yeah, and it's watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants, not to forget the tyrants' blood as well. Yeah, I definitely see confrontations coming, and I have to applaud the state of Texas at this point, because Texas has also gone out there and set up their own women's health organization, and basically told the federal government that they will not fund Planned Parenthood at all. I know that's one of the stories you have on your list, that they will not fund Planned Parenthood. The federal government took out the funding that it was giving the state of Texas. Texas turned around and said, screw you, we'll fund our own program, and we will maintain our state rights in the process. Too often, states give up their states' rights by accepting conditional federal funds. Now, I don't know what the federal government will try to do around the economy of Texas, taking money away if you don't cooperate with this or that federal dictate. I suspect that the federal government will try to use economic power before it uses force, or before it tries to use force to enforce its dictates. But the state of Texas has already shown a willingness to endure that, to counter that type of economic blackmail. And I think that, indeed, the state of Texas is a place to watch on this issue. I don't know if it's going to come yet to a shooting war, but I do think that if the federal government tries to enforce blatant gun confiscation type executive orders, that there will be a shooting war, not just between states' rights and the federal government, but many of the people will get on board with the states.
Well said, and I would go a step further. Here's the trump card that very few states have been willing to play, but I think Perry will play. And that is, he can say to the federal government, Texas is a net giver. The citizens of Texas can tell the federal government to drop dead. They can pay all of their quote-unquote federal taxes to the state of Texas. And Texas will represent them with the federal government. The federal government has no leverage over Texas because Texas pays out a lot more than it gets back. It's those, liberal states like Illinois and New York and New Jersey and California that get money. The Texases and the Kansas and the Georgias and the Indianas and the Ohios, they give the money. Chief.
Well, I'm reminded that in the past, Obama stated that he wanted to have a police force that was as big and as armed as well as the Army. And it's obvious now that that police force was not designed to protect our God-given rights. It was designed to do something else, which is going to be infringe on our rights. So thank goodness, I thank God that we have the state of Texas that's actually going out with a legal entity, a state entity, and actually, and somewhat now confronted Obama's tyrannical takeover of this country.
And I'll tell you this, I'm an old fart, but I can shoot straight. And I and probably 20 or 30 million of my closest friends would be glad to stand with Texas against the abomination. All right, let me move on because I want to cover a lot of territory here. There is a congressman from where else, Texas, named Stockman, who just won re-election, who has said if Obama tries to circumvent the rights guaranteed by the Constitution, he will file articles of impeachment. Now, with this luscious, that's not the right word, this drunk Boehner, who isn't worth a damn, but you know what? 218 members of the House, they can move impeachment forward. Your thoughts on that, Alan?
Well, Stan, I think properly understood what Stockman has done, if and when, by some strange construction of an executive order, Obama tries to do with a purely executive initiative what would be questionable even if it were done by legislation.
God bless you.
And we need to keep that in mind. In other words, something that is contrary to the limitations placed upon the Constitution or upon the U.S. government by the Constitution, whether it's done by the Congress or the President, is unconstitutional. And so if Congress shall make no law with respect to certain things, and it goes ahead and makes a law with respect to those things, that law has no authority under the Constitution. And that is what the state governments like Texas and others should stand and say and stand on the Constitution's clear and explicit reservations of power, which have not changed, which cannot be changed, except that the American people were to scrap the Constitution, which is what the elitist faction and Obama and a bunch of these other folks, Democrats and Republicans, are trying to do. So I think Stockman is exactly right to say that since they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, it is the responsibility of the people under the Constitution who have the authority to indict the president for high crimes and misdemeanors. And that's literally what this is, because he is purporting to take an action that goes against the highest law in the land. You can't get a higher misdemeanor or crime than that. And he should be impeached. Frankly, it would seem to me to be cut and dried that you'd have the Constitution and its clear words forbidding the infringement of the right to keep and bear arms. You'd have a president seeking to use the authority of government unlawfully, contrary to both God-given right and the Constitution. And impeachment should be a foregone conclusion. And with the Republicans in control of the House, it is their responsibility, under oath, not to sort of quibble about it, but to take that action. Now, here's one final point, though. Doesn't hurt and wouldn't hurt for the people in Congress working with folks in the states to go to court and see whether the Supreme Court wants to opt to give an opinion on their side. That doesn't decide the issue, but it would mean that potentially two branches of government would be arrayed against the third. Also something that the founders foresaw happening. That's why it was set up the way it was. But we do have to keep in mind that on issues of this kind, this is why they're so powerfully important. The words of the Constitution and the will of the people, to insist upon them, are the ultimate arbiters of the issue.
All right, let us go to Chief here. Chief?
Well, you can't top that. Dr. Keyes is very eloquent and knows this in depth. Again, what I think about, though, is I remember during the presidential debates, Newt Gingrich talked about the Supreme Court and had methods that he talked about using if the Supreme Court, like Dr. Keyes said, they give an opinion. But if the Supreme Court rules one way or the other, it doesn't necessarily mean that they change the law. The people enact the laws that they want. And so maybe they're worded incorrectly or maybe they need to be worded better, but the people can always say this is the law that we want, regardless of what the Supreme Court says or does.
All right. We just saw Barack Obama sign legislation that would give him, I don't know if it was legislation, it was a law, that gave himself armed guards for life. Am I the only one that sees the absolute hypocrisy in this guy thinking that he and his family should be able to protect themselves, but the vast majority of us should not be able to protect ourselves? And you saw what just happened in New York. Let's go to Brent.
Well, I think that if anybody needs protection, it's Obama, because he's making a lot of enemies by what he's doing. I won't disagree with you on that at all. Not only is it hypocritical around the gun ownership issue, but it's also, in my opinion, a self-centered abuse of power. The president is not there, to take care of himself. You know, Richard Nixon went out and hired his own private security after he was no longer president. Let the and the law, as it has been that the president gets Secret Service protection for 10 years, after which the president made enough money, the president can hire his own people. So Obama has consistently been extravagant in spending the American people's money when the American people are in a depression. And yes, it's a depression. It's not a recession. It's not a recovery. It's a depression. I don't know anybody who is not having a hard time making it through life right now in America. And, this is just one more example of what a dictator does. This is what a dictator does. Is I'm going to surround myself with protection from my enemies, and I'm going to make the people, the peasants, pay for it. And that's what's going on here. It's completely wrong. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done about that. I don't know, if this would take an act of Congress or what to overturn. Alan, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I do, but I have a slightly different take on it. I think that what we see here is one of those areas where the fact that we're dealing with somebody whose mindset and actions suggest he means to destroy the Constitution has us reacting to things that we would otherwise think through in a more reasonable way and conclude, oh, well, that's to be expected. And why do I say that? I say that because all I have to do in order to understand the purpose of providing for a period of time former presidents with protection is to imagine what the country would be put through if a former president of the United States was assassinated by the bad guys, by adversaries of America. That's all you have to ask yourself. That's a public harm. To deny that public harm is foolish. And therefore, public monies can be expended in order to make sure that the demoralizing effect of that public harm is not experienced by our polity. It was one of the reasons why former presidents were accorded this protection, and I think it makes perfect sense. In light of the common good, the public interest, a good case can be made that you don't let the country appear to be so feckless and weak that those who have acquitted the highest office in the land are then subject to nasty actions and retaliatory actions and demonstrative actions by the enemies of the United States. Intolerable, and we shouldn't let it happen.
Forever?
So I'm not going to question the substance of the issue. I think it is tragic that we have somebody sitting in the Oval Office that would be acting in a way that distracts from that common good rationale for something like this. But I'm not going to let myself be distracted. I try to think things through objectively, and just because Obama does it doesn't mean that it is inherently bad. It does suggest, final point, though, that we are already experiencing the ill effects of allowing an essentially anti-constitutional president who is blatantly taking an oath when he goes into office that he does not intend to fulfill. It's an example of what happens when people elect such an individual to the office. It complicates our ability to think clearly about things that would otherwise be clear.
Yeah, that's a point well made. I want to change the topic totally because every time I talk about Obama, I have to go to the bathroom. But there was a girl, we don't know her name. She was low IQ in a facility for juveniles. There were 13 boys and this one girl in this class. And this is in New York. And it turns out this girl was raped in the classroom within a few feet of the teacher, and the teacher didn't pay any attention. And then when it was reported by the girl, the school didn't even tell her parents. And now they fired the teacher, and they're all, making the whatever. And I'm saying, there are three things that come to mind. One, even though there are a lot of a liberal elite that don't know this, there are differences between boys and girls. Secondly, you don't put one girl with 13 boys and they're already proven to be juvenile delinquents. And third, that we don't respect, and of course, this is a story that's horrendous, but this story is being repeated thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times in our military, where we're putting women and men together in situations where women and men should not be together, and then you throw in the homosexuals, and we're not going to have a viable military. Chief, I'll start with you.
Well, I've been making the argument for some time that we should eliminate public schools because they have turned into just indoctrination centers for the left. We've removed God from public schools, taken away the Ten Commandments, and now, and I thought now, okay, so what are the stories we've heard about public schools in the last several years? What do we hear? The only stories that you hear are the teachers aren't getting paid enough, or the kids are getting damaged in school. So what we've created with public schools is a place where the students not only don't learn anything of any value, but they also now are in danger all of the time. They're in danger of being raped, they're in danger of other kind of bully activities, and then Sandy Hook shows you they're in danger of being in a gun-free zone where the kids are actually murdered and killed.
Brett?
I've been saying this for years. I think that parents who allow their children to remain one more day in public school are bad parents, because public schools are, like you said, little indoctrination centers, and they do not educate. They rather harm the minds of the children, the students there. I'm absolutely blown away by this story. I didn't get into details on this, but this girl, under her desk, was raped several times. They tried to sodomize her. The teacher ignored the entire situation. I'm completely beside myself on how that can be. They put this child, this girl with a 60, an IQ of around 60, they put her into a room with another boy who had a very violent juvenile boy who had sexually assaulted her, and they said, you two discuss it. Discuss it and work it out. That's what they did. And what blows my mind is that parents still will put their children into these environments, and then when something bad happens to the children, they go out and they file a lawsuit. And to me, it's like this is the worst kind of parenting. Parents who leave their children in public schools, I know, I hear it all the time, well, my school's a good school. Bull. None of them are good schools because they're all controlled by the government. Parents who leave their children in public school are bad parents.
You know what? That's a tough statement, but it happens to be true. Dr. Keys. I'm not hearing Dr. Keys.
Sorry. I turned off the mic. Unhappily, we live in this regard as we do on every front with what I think is actually an abuse of the public schools to demoralize our people. And I have written about this. I mentioned it in the context of Second Amendment rights in an article I did for WorldNet Daily. But it's one of those areas where, because some people want to put everything in little boxes, they think that over here we have issues of education, and over there we have Second Amendment issues, and in front of us here we might have what they call social issues, what are really issues of moral comportment and principle. But these are not unrelated, and our founders knew it. They read Montesquieu and people like this, who made it clear that if you want to maintain a certain form of government, particularly self-government, where the people are going to govern themselves, you must have virtue, where you must be encouraged, it must be respected, there must be a strength of character, there must be self-discipline, there must be respect for the forms of institutions, including family and family responsibility, that go along with the possibility of individuals facing their individual responsibilities and working in voluntary association with one another to deal with their situation. That has to be the case. Discard all these elements that are founded in the end on moral understanding, moral commitment, moral character, and everything falls apart. But the most important point is not that one. That is very important, that observation. But about our present circumstance, the most important thing to understand is that if you want to attack and destroy and break down a successful regime of self-government such as we've had, It would be your aim to demoralize the people. And I wish people would think about that word more. It's a beautiful word for conveying an underlying truth. The word demoralize, which we mean in the context of different battles and fights, get them to give up, right? It actually means what it literally says. Remove the morality of. Remove that which moralizes and that which sustains the courageous, faithful, self-confident spirit of a people. And that's what our schools are being systematically abused to do now. The very opposite of what they should be doing. And the final point, what is the end result of all of this, Dan? The end result of it is to put young people in an environment where they live in fear. Where instead of being people who look life in the eye, who stand with a sense of their own confidence and responsibility, who have underlying it all that sense that they may stand with confidence because they are superintended by an almighty God who will call them to account for their wrongdoings, but who will second their willingness to do what's right. That's no longer the aim. That's no longer the product. What we are going to produce is people who are used to living in an environment where they are subject to fear and terror, and where they will go whimpering to whatever champion masquerading as their friend who can somehow safeguard them from that which is the object of their fear. Fear, as Montesquieu points out, as others have pointed out, is the principle of tyranny and despotism. That is not just a happenstance. It's not just something that happens. It's a principle of government. And it's a principle of government that implies the complete destruction of our way of life. That we shall go from liberty to tyranny, from self-confidence and moral self-respect to abject fear, in which we are willing to hand over our dignity and our worth to people who have no regard except for their own power. And that's what we're doing, Stan. And this is the kind of so-called school in which the preparation of our future citizens involves what essentially amounts to this kind of tolerated terrorism.
And you haven't even talked about the fact that many of the quote-unquote teachers are the worst of the worst. They're perverts, they're pedophiles, they're godless, and they're held up as something special. They are special crap. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with Dr. Alan Keyes, Brent Johnson, Chief Steve, and me. Just a moment. I like to eat. You like to eat? We all do. And usually we run to the grocery store, we run to the convenience store, or we have something in the fridge. But power's been out in parts of this country in the last few weeks. We don't know what's going to come down the pike economically. Smart people are putting in food. Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves is a line of foods that you can put away that will last for a very long time. You know, they say eat what you store and store what you eat. This is great tasting stuff, healthy for you, a full line. You go to our website, cpnlive.com, and click on the button for Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves and see all the different things we have. This is good tasting food. It's reasonably priced. It will last. And it's worth its weight in gold if a problem arises. I know you don't think there's going to be anything that goes wrong. Actually, you do. This is smart. This is smart insurance. This is smart preparation. This is smart thinking. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have parents, you have dependents, you have an appetite. All those things can be addressed by a frugal but smart investment in Alpine Air Gourmet Reserves. Try them out. You will be tickled to death with the taste of them. You know what? In many cases, people start to eat this and they think, heck, this tastes better and costs less than what you're going to the grocery store to buy. cpnlive.com, check it out. Hey, my name is Stan Solomon, and you know if I have something to say, I'll say it. And I'll only tell you the truth because I'm a Republican, not a Democrat. Democrats always lie. Republicans only lie half the time. I don't lie at all. This is the Fuel Mule. It's an extraordinary product that was developed by a friend of mine, an engineer, and it increases the fuel mileage on your vehicle. If you have a combustion engine, this will increase your mileage by 10 to 20%. It bolts around your fuel line. You can install it yourself or have your mechanic do it. It is an extraordinary item and it flat works. I've been using it for more than 10 years. It's increased my mileage on every vehicle I put it on, and by the way, it will last forever. You can get rid of your vehicle, just take it off and put on the next one. Go to cpnlive.com. You'll have more information there. You can order it right there. We absolutely guarantee you'll be satisfied. The Fuel Mule. It's a way to kick down your cost of fuel and kick up your mileage. Don't you love the name? I thought of it. The Fuel Mule. Let me ask you a question. Do you like being sick? I have in my hand an incredible product. It's called TR10 supercolloidal silver. TR10 stands for a trace to the negative 10th power. The particles in this silver product are 6 to 8 angstroms, 6 to 8 10 billionths of a meter. Now listen to me. Silver has been the magic bullet for all of human existence. The Egyptians used silver instruments. We use silverware. They put silver in your teeth because nothing can grow on silver. Silver will kill anything but liberalism. I'm working on that. This product, you go to cpnlive.com, buy 1 quart of this product. It will last you for a very long time. Anytime you feel like you've been exposed to something bad, take some of this product, spray it in your mouth, or take a little bit and gargle it, swallow it. It will kill any pathogen. The average antibiotic kills 10 to 20 different pathogens. This product will kill 700 plus. Do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, do your doctor a favor. He's tired of seeing you. Get supercolloidal silver. Go to cpnlive.com, order the product. It's $29.95 plus shipping. I think it's $39.95 delivered any place in America right to your door. It's worth 10 times that. Check it out. If you're not 100% happy, just return it and we'll give you your money back.